Hello everybody, my name is Emily Schrick, and this is my I Can Read Results final for our statistics course. The research article that I will be reviewing in my PowerPoint was a paper that was written to find out if there was a significant difference in student success when exposed to 3 types of math courses prior to testing: online courses, blended courses, and face-to-face courses. There were 167 participants for this study, the average age being 25.5 years old. The sample consisted of 97 females, which was 58% of participants, and was predominantly Caucasian at 49% and African American at 43%. There was a combination of full-time students at 48% of participants and part-time students at 52% of the participants. The research in this article took place during the summer and fall semesters of an intermediate algebra course at a large Mid-Atlantic community college offered in all 3 types: online, blended, and face-to-face. This study used quantitative research methodologies to compare student success in different learning environments. There were 2 research questions presented in this article. The first: does the type of learning environment relate to successful course performance as measured by tests, final exam, and course grade? The second was, does the effect of course performance depend on attrition? For the purpose of this study, student success is defined as passing the course with a grade of 70% or higher. Several instruments were used to collect data about student demographics and student success, including 7 course unit tests and a standardized intermediate algebra competency exam. Demographic information was obtained from the college's database. Students were informed of this prior to any decision to participate in the study. Information was only collected on the students that agreed to participate. In this paper, differences between environments and categorical variables were analyzed using chi-square tests of significance. We will not focus on these results, therefore, since we did not cover the chi-square test in class. Next, we will talk about the variables in this study. The independent variables in this study are which type of class was utilized, either online, blended, or face-to-face. The dependent variable in this study was student success, which was identified by a course grade of 70% or higher. There was no range in this study for dependent variables. Either students were labeled successful or unsuccessful. Next, I will identify the inferential statistics used in this study. The statistics used in the study that I have provided is a one-way ANOVA. This comparison was used because there were 3 separate groups provided in this particular study: online class, blended class, and face-to-face class. The inferential statistics used are stated clearly in the paper. Next, I will state the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis is that the 3 groups identified are equal in measure. The alternative hypothesis is that the 3 groups identified are not equal in measure. Next, I will state the level of significance used in this study. The level of significance is 0.05. On this slide, I will state the critical value for my one-way ANOVA and the formulas used to calculate both degrees of freedom. To determine the critical values for one-way ANOVA, you must first determine the degrees of freedom. The first degree of freedom is determined between groups, which utilizes the equation k minus 1, where k is the number of groups. Therefore, the first degree of freedom is 2. The second degree of freedom is determined by the formula n minus k, where n is the number of participants and k is the number of groups. This is a within-group calculation. Therefore, the second degree of freedom is 164. Our critical value, using a table online, is therefore 2.99. Specific test statistics were not reported in the article in equation form. However, the results were reported by using f-values. Each statistical test compared one form of class, either online, blended, or face-to-face, to another. For illustrative purposes, effect sizes were calculated for the course average comparisons and were reported in eta squared. The effect size for the face-to-face versus online difference was 0.17, favoring the face-to-face environment. For the face-to-face versus blended comparison, the effect size was 0.53, also favoring the face-to-face environment. The online versus blended comparison effect size was 0.31, favoring the online environment. This slide states the conclusion of hypothesis testing, which is stated clearly in my article. The null hypothesis was rejected that all types of courses were equal. They retained the alternative hypothesis that all groups are not equal. They considered this a surprising finding considering the literature that group grades are typically equal in all three types of courses. On this last slide, I will evaluate the article from a statistical analysis standpoint. I feel the test statistics could have been reported more clearly. I also feel it would have been better to do an overall comparison of the three groups instead of trying to compare each group to one another. Again, I feel it may have been helpful to provide more statistics such as degrees of freedom and critical values. I feel this analysis is not really appropriate considering that the one-way ANOVA test statistics were not stated more clearly for how they reached their conclusions. I think the report is appropriate, but it could have all been stated more clearly throughout the article. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.